It was supposed to be a quiet morning on the ranch. The sun was just starting to peek over the horizon, the kind of calm that makes you want to sip your coffee a little slower and take in the day. But that peace didn't last long. Out of nowhere, my neighbor from the HOA, who we've all come to know as Karen, decided this was the perfect day to stir up more trouble. And this time, she didn't just show up with another complaint or a stack of bogus fines. No, she rolled right up in her brand new Bentley and parked it directly in front of my barn door, blocking me from getting inside. Now, if you know ranch life, you understand that barns aren't just storage. They're the heartbeat of the property. Feed, equipment, sometimes even animals, everything runs through those doors. So, imagine standing there, staring at a shiny luxury car where your tractor should be rolling out. At first, I thought it had to be some kind of mistake, but when I asked her to move it, she crossed her arms, smiled, and told me she was making a point. That's when I knew this wasn't about a parking spot. It was about control. The longer her car sat there, the more the tension grew. I could feel my patience wearing thin as chores piled up and time slipped away. Karen, of course, looked completely unbothered, like blocking someone's livelihood was just another power play. I had a decision to make: let her win again, or finally take a stand. And that's exactly when things took a turn that no one on this street was expecting. Let's just say the tractor was already running, and the barn doors weren't going to stay blocked for long. To really understand why this whole scene hit me so hard, you need a little bit of background. Living out here on the ranch isn't just a lifestyle. It's work that starts before sunrise and doesn't stop until long after dark. Every tool, every piece of equipment has its place, and when something gets in the way, it throws everything off. That barn door she blocked wasn't just an entrance. It was my main access to the tractor, feed, and the supplies that keep things running day to day. Blocking it wasn't just inconvenient, it was like cutting off the heart of the property. Karen had been testing me for months before this moment. Ever since she was elected to the HOA board, she seemed to think her role gave her the right to control everything around here, even land that wasn't technically part of the association. She didn't like the look of the barn, didn't like the tractor being parked out front, and definitely didn't like that I wasn't quick to follow her endless suggestions. Each time I stood my ground, she found another way to push back, whether it was leaving notes, calling in so-called violations, or showing up at the worst possible times. But today was different. This wasn't a note tucked under the door or an email full of demands. This was her car, a gleaming Bentley, planted right in front of my livelihood like a wall I wasn't supposed to get past. It almost felt like she wanted to prove I couldn't operate without her approval, that my independence was something she could control with the turn of a key. I stood there, tractor idling in the background, staring at her smug expression. She thought she had me cornered. What she didn't know was that the day wasn't going to end the way she planned. The longer I stood there with her Bentley blocking the barn, the clearer it became that this wasn't about parking or even the barn itself. This was about power. Karen thrived on making everything a battle, and this time, she had picked the one place I couldn't afford to be locked out of. What made it worse was the look she gave me, like she had already won. It wasn't just smugness. It was the kind of confidence that comes from someone who believes rules bend in their favor. As I tried to keep calm, I thought about the ripple effect her actions had. My livestock still needed feed, and the tractor was needed for hauling water out to the back pasture. Every minute wasted meant more strain on the routine that kept this place running. And then there was the neighbor factor. Folks around here had already started whispering about the constant HOA drama, some siding with me, others too afraid to speak up because they didn't want Karen's wrath directed at them. It wasn't just my barn door she was blocking. It was an entire community being held hostage by her need to control. I also couldn't ignore the personal side of it. This ranch had been in my family for years, and I had worked hard to keep it going. Every board, every fence, every early morning was tied to that barn. See it treated like a chess piece in her power game lit a fire inside me. But I also knew that acting too fast could backfire. Karen was the type who documented everything, waiting for any slip-up she could twist into an HOA complaint. With the tractor rumbling behind me and her car gleaming in the way, the standoff only grew heavier. One of us was going to break first, but it wasn't going to be me. The sound of the tractor's engine seemed louder with every passing second. echoing against the barn walls like a warning. I kept one hand on the steering wheel, the other gripping the edge of the seat, eyes locked on that shiny Bentley parked dead in my way. Karen stood nearby with her arms crossed, her sunglasses reflecting the sunlight, and the tractor behind me. She looked untouchable, like she believed no one would dare challenge her or the expensive car she was using as a weapon. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down. Every chore waiting inside the barn only added to the urgency. The feed bags, the tools, the livestock depending on me, all of it hung in the balance while she treated this like some sort of neighborhood power play. My patience was thin, but I couldn't ignore the crowd starting to form. A few neighbors had stepped out to watch, standing at the edge of their driveways, whispering behind their hands. The air felt heavy with curiosity and tension, every set of eyes waiting to see what I'd do next. Karen thrived on that attention. She tilted her head, smirked, and called out something about rules needing to be respected. It wasn't about rules, though. It was about her proving that she could block me, slow me down, and make me bend to her will. That smirk of hers was enough to fuel every ounce of frustration I'd been holding back. The tractor rumbled beneath me, the vibration carrying through the ground like it was ready to move whether I was or not. My hands tightened on the wheel. The barn door loomed just beyond her car, so close, yet still out of reach. All I could think was, this standoff couldn't last much longer. Something had to give. Just when I thought the standoff had reached its peak, the situation twisted in a way I hadn't expected. From the corner of my eye, I spotted a white SUV pulling up slowly to the edge of the property. At first, I figured it was another curious neighbor, maybe someone coming to watch the drama unfold. But as the vehicle rolled closer, I realized it wasn't just anyone. It was another HOA board member and one of Karen's closest allies. The timing couldn't have been more deliberate. The SUV door opened, and out stepped a man holding a clipboard, the kind of official presence Karen loved to hide behind. He glanced at me, then at the tractor, then scribbled something down as if he were already preparing another violation notice. Karen's grin widened like she had just pulled off the ultimate checkmate. Now it wasn't just her Bentley blocking the barn. It was her word backed by another board member, ready to spin the situation in her favor. The neighbors on the sidelines shifted uncomfortably. Some muttered under their breath, clearly fed up with the power games, but no one stepped forward. It was like watching a stage play where everyone knew their role. Karen as the villain, her ally as the enforcer, and me standing at the center, trying to protect what mattered most. The air was thick with tension, the tractor's engine still rattling the ground. Every second dragged heavier than the last. With her car still blocking the door and now an HOA witness standing by, Karen believed she had tightened the noose. But what she didn't realize was that her plan had only made me more determined. The stakes had just been raised higher than either of us had planned, and the real showdown was about to begin. The moment felt like it stretched forever, the tractor rumbling, the Bentley gleaming like a barrier of arrogance, and Karen smirking with her board member ally scribbling notes like he was already preparing my punishment. But something inside me snapped. I eased the tractor forward, slow enough to make every neighbor's breath catch, but steady enough that Karen's smirk finally faltered. The growl of the engine drowned out the whispers as the massive tires inched closer to her precious car. Karen rushed forward, waving her hands, yelling for me to stop. Her ally barked something about serious violations and consequences, but their voices barely cut through the roar of the machine. I stopped just inches away from the Bentley's bumper, the tractor's shadow swallowing the shine of its polished hood. The crowd was frozen, every eye locked on what would happen next. Then, with one final rev of the engine, I made my move, not against the car, but around it. With careful precision, I maneuvered the tractor into a tight turn, kicking up gravel and dust as I slipped through the narrow gap between her car and the fence. It wasn't easy, but it was enough to prove her blockade wasn't as powerful as she believed. The barn doors swung open, and the tractor rolled inside, breaking her illusion of control in front of everyone. The neighbors gasped, some even cheering under their breath. Karen's face turned red as her ally scribbled furiously, trying to regain authority. But here was the twist they hadn't counted on. One of the quiet neighbors finally stepped forward. He pulled out his phone and revealed he'd been recording the entire incident, every smirk, every word. every moment of her blocking my barn. Suddenly, the power shifted, and it wasn't me on the defensive anymore. The whole neighborhood had just witnessed who was really in the wrong. As soon as the neighbor held up his phone, the entire mood shifted. Karen's confidence cracked, and her Eli's clipboard suddenly didn't look so powerful. The neighbors who had been standing back started whispering louder, this time not in fear, but in agreement. They had seen enough of her games, and now there was proof. For once, I didn't have to say a word. Her own actions spoke louder than anything I could have argued. Karen tried to brush it off, claiming it was just a misunderstanding. But nobody was buying it. The video captured her smug grin, her refusal to move the Bentley, and the way she turned the whole thing into a spectacle. The board member who had come to back her up looked uneasy, realizing he was caught in the same frame. Instead of intimidating me, they had given the entire street a reason to finally push back. When she finally got in her car and drove away, the crowd slowly began to break apart, but not before a few neighbors stopped to pat me on the shoulder. One of them even said, "About time someone stood up to her." It wasn't about tractors or barn doors anymore. It was about proving that her hold over everyone wasn't unbreakable. That night, sitting on the porch with the barn door wide open, I thought about how close I'd come to letting her win. She had tried to block more than just a doorway. She wanted to block independence, routine, and peace of mind. But in the end, her own pride turned against her. The takeaway was simple. Bullies only have as much power as people allow them to. Out here on the ranch, where hard work keeps everything moving, no car, no HOA rule, and no Karen can stand in the way of that for long.